Monday. Monday. Weekend, man. Still weekend. Long weekend. Monday. Let us pray. Lord God, we thank you that your Son, Jesus Christ, came among us as one who serves. That through his actions and his words, we have been taught a nobler way to lead. Grant your wisdom to all in places of authority in this and every land. They may know your will, and keeping always before their minds the needs of others, may discover that in serving them, they are serving you. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
The meeting held on Monday, 17th of February 2025, Friday, 8th August 2025, Tuesday, 12th August 2025, and Friday, 22nd August 2025 to be confirmed. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be confirmed.
The question is that the aforementioned minutes be confirmed. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby confirmed. Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, 16 September 2025 to be deferred. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be deferred.
Question is that the aforementioned minutes be deferred. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby deferred.
Announcements by Your Honour, Mr. Speaker.
I wish to acknowledge the presence of the Deputy Secretary General of the CPA and his wife, Jarvis Mutaya, who is present in this honourable chamber.
Messages from Her Excellency the President, petitions, papers, government notices, private members' notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills, statements by ministers, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, Notices of motion for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance. Orders of the day.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of Standing Orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42 subsection 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Seconder. The question is that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Government business, sir.
Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 8, in the name of the Honourable Minister of Home Affairs and Information, to move the second reading of the Caribbean Community Free Movement of Nationals Bill 2025.
Honourable Member for Christchurch East.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to, formally introduce and debate the aforesaid bill. And this, to me, is an exceedingly proud moment. I have, for all my life, been an advocate and a proponent of full Caribbean integration. I was blessed to have gone to the University of the West Indies, KFL campus, back in the days when the campuses specialized. So Barbados at the time would have had the jurisdiction over law, Jamaica would have had the purview of medicine, and Trinidad would have been responsible for engineering. And by virtue of the specializations, sir, any student in the Caribbean wishing to study law had to find themselves in Barbados to do so. So you were in class with people from Jamaica, Trinidad, Antigua, Dominica, Belize, Bahamas, everybody bringing their own perspective. Campus was a melting pot. And by virtue of that experience, sir, it's put me in a fantastic position. Wherever I travel in the Caribbean, I could pick up the phone and call somebody and say, I coming in, meet me at the airport. Or I come in, I want some place to stay. So I have friendships and relationships throughout the entire Caribbean. And that has made the Caribbean a special place for me. I was the president of the Barbados Bar Association at the time of the inauguration of the CCJ. And we would have worked to doing that, to establishing formally the entity that recognized our particular jurisprudence and recognized that we could no longer look to the Queen at the time and to Great Britain to have the final word in our own affairs. And it was a good day. It was a good day to recognize independence, to recognize a mutual contribution to the growth of something even bigger. So Barbados had its layers. We had the Magistrates Court, we had the High Court, we had the Court of Appeal. But then, for final decisions, we had to go to the Privy Council, which was inaccessible to us. We adopted the CCJ at the time, along with some others in its final appellate jurisdiction, but also with the entire of CARICOM in the original jurisdiction of the CCJ. And it felt good that day, sir. It felt good to know that we were a part of something bigger. We were part of something special. We were part of something that contemplated the coming together of the entire Caribbean. Actually, sir, a lot of people may not know this. I was one of the persons who was instrumental in drafting the mission statement for the CCJ. So when you go into the CCJ and you see the mission statement up on the wall, right, then please bear in mind that one of your own had a hand in drafting it. Now, sir, all that to provide a context. All that to provide an umbrella. All that to establish that what we're doing is nothing new. Sir, the Honourable Prime Minister, actually before I get to that, why are we here anyway? Why are we actually doing it? what is in the cards for Barbados? We in Barbados, it is acknowledged by everybody, we are facing a population crisis. We have a declining population. Our death rates are outstripping our birth rates. And we have an aging population. What does that mean going forward? That means going forward it's hard to plan. It's hard to plan for the development of Barbados. It's hard to plan for the children that are being born. It's hard to plan our social sector. It's hard to plan our housing sector. It's hard to plan the collection of taxes, what the tax regimes look like. It is hard to plan what Barbados will look like. We have also accepted, so I know exactly where my speech is going to drift into controversial. And we're not there yet. I think we have all accepted that we cannot get the population boost necessary to sustain Barbados by natural means. The analogy was drawn that if, it was a priest who said it, sir, if every Barbadian of legal age went home tonight and set about the business of having some children, the best we could hope for is a bump in terms of contribution to our economy in 18 years. So if even we all started working assiduously on growing the population through natural means, well, you may have a lot of kids running around in a couple of years, a lot of children running. Yes, sir, let's not drift to the analogy, introduce goats and sheep. We would have a lot of children running around Barbados in a very short space of time. We will have increased population in the schools. We will have to do increased programs for children. But the financial benefit and input into the economy that will sustain those exact same children, you're not going to see it for another 18 years when they actually become a part of the workforce. So I think everybody's accepted. The population review, the census, has pointed us in the direction that, yes, we have a crisis. I think right now, everybody in Barbados accepts that there is a crisis. So I think we're all on common ground up to this point in time. What we do about it is perhaps where the point of departure starts. Now, sir, when CARICOM was conceived, actually, they even start with CARICOM. The Honourable Prime Minister, sir, in an address to the nation recently outlined some historical facts that should give some people comfort. I've been hearing that this is a government agenda to boost voters. I've been hearing that there's a government agenda to sell citizenship. I've been hearing that this is a government agenda to financially benefit and profit individuals yet unnamed. I've heard all of that recently. I've heard that as recently as Saturday from a sports person, sir, of doom and gloom. One of the horsemen of the apocalypse. Heralding, sir, nothing positive for Barbados. And what I noted with interest as I heard the wild accusations being leveled, I thought to myself, boy, whoever the person is mashing the crease. The person then caught themselves and said they will say no more on this. They were at the point of financial benefit to individuals, I think. And they said then they will say no more. They will say all they have to say when the debate comes up next week in Parliament, because they're protected while speaking in there from their words. Well, sir, I actually thought that if you're speaking truth, you don't need protection at all. I happen to know, sir, having practiced law for a number of years, that the best defense to defamation is truth. So if you're speaking the truth, you have nothing to fear. in the realm of defamation. So it is instructive to me that someone would not say what they had to say from the back of a truck to the 74 people gathered in front of them, the same 74 that were on the last march and the march before that, that you could not take comfort in addressing those 74 people to say what you had to say. But you chose to wait with a threat of coming to divulge it all in Parliament today because you're protected in doing it from here. I can't wait, sir, to hear what it is. But that got my mind to thinking, what are you really quarreling about? What part of this is causing concern? Because free movement and regional institutions are nothing new. If we go back historically, sir, successive governments in Barbados, not the, but successive governments in Barbados and leaders of Barbados, sir, have worked and struggled to pull the region together and embrace the concept of one region. Grantley Adams, sir, was instrumental in building out the West Indies Federation and was its first and only leader. The Right Honourable Errol Walton Barrow was a founder of Carifta and CARICOM. The Right Honourable Errol Walton Barrow was a founder of Carifta and CARICOM. CARICOM being the ultimate umbrella body in relation to the Caribbean as it stands now, and the Treaty of Chaguaramas, which emanates from CARICOM, being the defining treaties to govern our relationships between states in CARICOM. Sir Lloyd Erskine Sandiford, no less a person than Sir Lloyd Erskine Sandiford, was a signatory to the Grand Anse Declaration in 1989 that led to the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, that established the CARICOM single market and economy. Owen Arthur took up the reins and guided the single market into life. So Sir Lloyd signed for it, and Owen Arthur followed behind, not in a partisan, narrow-minded, political sabotaging mentality, but in recognizing the beauty of something that had meaning to us. He took up the charge initiated by his predecessor from the opposite side and went fully down the line until the current Prime Minister, sir. There has been no other Prime Minister more hell-bent on regional integration than Owen Arthur, than the late Owen Arthur. Sir, he brought the single market economy to life, and he led our entry into the CCGA. He was the Prime Minister when I was the President of the Bar and the President of the organization Commonwealth Caribbean Bar Associations that were instrumental in bringing the CCGA into life. All of them knew. Everybody I mentioned so far knew and acknowledged that a small country like Barbados needed a regional integration movement for it to be able to stand strong and to do better for our people, sir. We, as a Caribbean unit, pulled together also, sir, for something special. All of our leaders pulled together for two of the signal achievements in the Caribbean. The establishment of University of the West Indies, which I spoke about, which we all bragged about, which the majority of us in here have come through and benefited and owe our professional lives, our qualification, our educational development to that, which this government, sir, has long held must be accessible and available free of cost to all Barbadians who qualify, which another government before us seemed intent on stripping away the access to the foundational developmental tools that we fought so hard for by making students pay tuition fees. The ethos, sir, of the recent governments, the last one before this one and this one, could not be starker than night and day. We are intent on seeing our regional institutions succeed. We are intent on seeing the dream come to fruition. We are intent on realizing our maximum potential as a people of common lineage, common geographical space, and common abilities. While those in waiting appear to be embracing the mandate of the former set to destroy it all. Sir, if I talk about regional integration, where we all sit as one, where we all rally behind each other, we need look no further than the West Indies cricket team. I am slightly hesitant, sir, to mention them because we've not been doing too well recently. But I remember the days, sir, when my father used to pull me out of school. If the West Indies was playing a test in Barbados, my father, who believed a child should never miss school, if I was coughing, sir, wheezing, my father insisted I went to school. I couldn't miss a day of school, but cricket was different. I had to come and see the West Indies. I had to be proud as we did well. I had to be there to witness history and watch as we beat the superpowers in the world. When we all came together and pulled in one direction. I remember, sir, crawling under the Greenwich and Haynes stand. Because I used to be able to get under and then come out in front and climb over the. So, but however, sir, at the time when I did that, I was below the age of criminal responsibility and could not have been charged and could possess no criminal intent. I was.
Honourable, you stole away.
I was a child, sir, eager to see my heroes. And I did what was necessary. But sir, the point I'm making, sir, is that without thinking, we have held to these things. And we've wanted to see, without thinking, the development and the fruition to maximum potential. Now, sir, let's contrast that. I was speaking history just now and creating a background. Let's contrast that, sir. In 2008, after the government of one of the Caribbean's foremost regionalists, Owen Arthur, when the opposition now became the government then, came into power in 2008. So let's talk historically. Let us see the difference in the ethos. You remember the days of ever so welcome, wait for call? That was their answer to our Caribbean brothers and sisters. You are welcome to come here, but don't pick up and come of your own initiative. Wait until we call you. What was the first move by that government in 2008? Upon assuming the reins of power, the first move was to send back all, round up all the non-nationals, round up all our brothers and sisters from the same St. Vincent, from the same Dominica, from the same Belize, and send them all back home. Say, wait out there until we call you back. That was move number one, to purge Barbados of anybody who is not Barbadian. That should have been the signal. And we are still reeling from that. You only have to pass through the city. Up to 2008, the city, out Fairchild Street, Nelson Street, all the environs of the city was bustling. You could go down there and get a food late at night. They had activity in the city. Bridgetown was populated because people were in the city up to late. Nightclubs in the city. Restaurants in the city. No, sir, we have not recovered from 2008. And you always look, sir, you start the way you intend to finish. How did they finish? The last act of the Democratic Labour Party in 2018, the last act was to try to block the same Caribbean people and CARICOM nationals from voting. when they had the right under the law to do it. They started by kicking all out and ended by trying to block the vote from the same people, even the ones who were here legally. They tried to block the vote from it. That case, I know, because the person who filed the case against the government was me. And we had hell trying to find somebody willing to stand as a claimant because everybody was afraid of victimization by that government. All non-nationals were afraid. They did not want to step forward and say that the Dems unfair me. Some brave people, a couple of professionals, a professor from UE, some brave people step forward and say, you know what? I can stand in the breach. I will be that person to push for what is right. We got the judgment, sir, and the appeal. We got the judgment on appeal, and then they went to the CCJ. They didn't just fight it, they fought it tooth and nail all the way up to the last court in the land because they believed that this case would not be heard before the elections. That's why the election was, people want to know why the polls closed late 2018. The polls closed late 2018 because even after getting the judgment and the CCJ is saying, you're misinterpreting the law, these people have a right to vote, they still block them from going on to the voters list, such that the elections had to be prolonged to allow persons, the late registrants, to be able to vote. That is the last act they did, a last act of spite. I, sir, am not even surprised based on that historical precedent of the position now being taken by that side. I'm not surprised. The argument I hear was that we ain't had jurisdiction to do it, we ain't had a legal basis to do it. We here correcting any missteps, if there were any, but we here making wrong things right. We here putting it in line, putting all the ducks in a row. We are here clarifying everything, but you're objecting to the bill. What is the point? We hearing, sir, objections and theories. Actually, sir, I'm not going to touch other legislation that's not before the chamber. I am simply saying, sir, you're either on board with regionalism and the movement towards free movement, or you are not. It can't be 1 foot in and 1 foot out. Sir, I've heard a ton of people, a flood of people coming in to take your jobs. People coming in to take your jobs. Be careful, they're coming in to take your jobs. I think on the 1st of October, we had probably 10 people from those countries arriving in Barbados. About 10. I think up to now, sir, the deluge hasn't happened. That's the reality. We printed out a fact sheet saying this is what you need to do to avail yourself. I'm going to make it a document house, sir. This is what you need to do to avail yourself of full free movement. So people won't be confused when they come in. They know how to proceed, how to get the benefits, where they need to register and for what. I went on there myself. And I heard comment on why I went on there. I went on there myself. You want to know what? Why? Because sir, I'm the minister responsible for immigration. And I like to check and see what is happening. I like to verify that everybody is doing what they're supposed to do. I like to be on hand so people can ask questions and have the questions answered. I went on there, sir, because that falls under my ministry, and that is what a responsible minister should do. We are changing a regime. I would have been derelict had I not taken the opportunity to go down there and speak to some people. I went with the press. I bought the press there, but I could tell you I didn't call them. The press was there to find out who was coming through. They want to catch a couple of people coming through the doors to ask them, how was your experience? But I went on there with my one self. I advised the chief immigration officer, right? I advised my PS, and I went down, and the shift leader, and I went down to talk to the people on the shift. And everybody seemed comfortable with the process. Now, sir, as I said, this is the sheet that's given to all what we call nationals. So nationals of the states who are involved in the full free movement in Barbados. And it has points, sir, 1 to 12. We condense this into 1 to 12. And with your leave, sir, I'm going to read it in because, as I say, I plan to make it a documenting house. But I want all of Barbados to hear and understand the simplified version. 1, all nationals from the 4 participating member states must present a valid CARICOM passport upon arrival at the port of entry. Non-CARICOM spouses and dependents are required to provide appropriate documentation to verify their relationship with the CARICOM national. Simple. 2, nationals entering Barbados can do so on a one-way ticket. No return ticket is necessary. No, sir, we used to have a requirement for a return ticket because it used to be granted a 6-month stay if you're a CARICOM national coming in. We do not require you to have a return ticket. 3, upon arrival at the designated port of entry, you should be granted indefinite stay status. This stay will be communicated digitally to all relevant agencies. Barbados does not stamp passports on entry. Now, sir, I heard all of the things that this legislation is going to do. And I wish to pause at 3 to clarify some things. When somebody comes into Barbados, if you are a national from CARICOM, you get a 6-month entry. All that has changed now is that you now don't have to leave after 6 months. If you want to stay on longer, if you want to come and go away, come back, you can do so. You are free to do so without hassle. You don't have to apply for an extension. You ain't got to apply for nothing else. You are granted indefinite stay to come and go as you please. Sir, if you wish to work, let me get to 4. If having been granted indefinite stay at the port of entry, you opt to exercise your right to full free movement regime to reside indefinitely and or work in Barbados, you will be required to register with the Ministry of Labour and Social Security. This is to be done online at labour.gov.bb or etc. But you register, if you want to stay on, if you intend to make Barbados your home, you have to register with the Labour Department. If you want to work, you have to register with the Labour Department. For those persons who were here before, so if you were in Barbados before the 1st of October 2025, that's 5, and have already been granted some form of status by the Immigration Department, you're entitled to claim the indefinite stay status. You need to register with the Ministry of Labour as outlined in 4 above. The practical term, sir, is that the Ministry of Labour is sending persons to immigration just to verify, because the Ministry of Labour will not know if there's an issue with you, will not know if there's something preventing you. We can do the checks because, sir, we verify everybody else, everybody coming into Barbados. So in terms of the hullabaloo, and we're encouraging criminals and persons seeking asylum and trying to flee their countries coming into Barbados, sir, the exact same criteria for entry into Barbados that existed before October 1st still exists now. If you're coming into Barbados and you're flagged by JRCC or IMPACTS or even Interpol as being an undesirable person or a prohibited person or whatnot, you cannot enter Barbados, don't care what passport you have. So you still need to get all of the checks and balances that existed prior to October 1st still exist now. Every single one. The only difference is when you come in, instead of having to leave in 6 months, you can stay indefinitely. Or when you come in and you want to work, you can go and register to work. Now, the registration to work, sir, is because we need to know who's actually working in Barbados. We have a job, a skills registry. We're doing a lot of other things to streamline our processes and collect information. We need to ensure people register for NIS because there's also portability of certain benefits. If you have worked in St. Vincent your whole life and you paid into pension there and you leave and come to Barbados, your benefits can transfer to Barbados. They can as it stands now. But we also need to just verify who's coming, what skill sets do we have. The government needs to be able to plan. The persons must be here, they must pay NIS, they must pay income tax, they must do all it is that they're supposed to do. And in respect, I've heard some professionals being concerned, sir, as to the persons coming in might be unqualified to practice the profession that they practice in other countries and practice it in Barbados. That does not arise. The persons coming to work do so under the same terms and conditions of a Barbadian in Barbados. If I am a lawyer, I have every year to renew my practicing certificate and I have to pass the bar. If somebody is coming now as a skilled national from overseas and they come and they want to work in Barbados, they have to be called to the bar in Barbados. It is a requirement. You have to be called to the bar and you have to have a practicing certificate. This does not remove that. I don't know how much clearer I can make it. If you are a doctor and you want to work in Barbados by the full free movement, you have to satisfy all the requirements for being a doctor. If your degree is one that is not recognized by BAMP, or your qualification is one that's not recognized, but it don't matter that you practice in St. Vincent as a cardiothoracic surgeon. If you come here and BAMP does not recognize that, you can't practice in Barbados as a cardiothoracic surgeon. You can come and live, you can come and do something else. You can come and practice as a GP if we accept that qualification. But all of the requirements for working in Barbados that Bajans have to do, all the boxes we have to tick, the persons coming in, the nationals, the free-moving nationals have to tick those as well, sir. In the event an incoming national is accompanied by one or more minor dependents and proposes to access public or secondary education, the minors need to be registered with the Ministry of Education Transformation, and required documents, a valid ID, passport, national ID or birth certificate, academic records, report cards, ... Common sense things. You come into the school system, we don't know you. So you register with the Ministry of Education so they can ensure you go to the right school. So they can ensure that they know what class to put you in. So you are not disadvantaged, and people who are teaching you are not disadvantaged either. 7, incoming nationals who opt to reside indefinitely in Barbados will be entitled to register for and receive a national ID card. And it is this card that they will use to access emergency and primary health care services in Barbados public health care system. So you got to get an ID card. Now, I also heard that we are trying to flood people in here to get them IDs so they can vote. Sir, under the legislation that governs registration of voters, is trite law. It is trite. We went through this with the case in 2018. All Commonwealth nationals who reside in Barbados for a period of 3 years or more, and not a resident, like a permanent resident, residing is a matter of fact. All who have resided in Barbados for 3 years or more are entitled to vote. Commonwealth nationals also includes the bulk of the Caribbean and most of the people under CARICOM skilled national status. So as it stands now, the bulk of CARICOM, if they came to Barbados and they lived for 3 years, they can vote. Nothing has changed. The one thing is the Treaty of Chaguaramas contemplates and recognizes contingent rights. So the rights that accrue to me will accrue to my spouse or my dependents. So if my spouse, the actual amendment, sir, sticks in the registration of people and the registration act that full free moving nationals. You ask, why would we put that in if CARICOM persons can already qualify to vote? Because I might be coming with my wife, who is not a national, but my wife will be entitled to stay with me here in Barbados, and after 3 years, the law recognizes she's been here for 3 years, working, paying taxes, whatnot, that person is entitled to vote as well. That's the only reason that that actual section was amended. We're not reducing the time to qualify for voting. It's not anybody be able to vote after the 6 months. Sir, I listened to some of the objections and I thought to myself, Do the persons reading this understand law? Or even more basic, is the person reading this understanding English? The amendments and the legislation, sir, are so simply drafted. They're uncomplicated. This should properly, sir, have been one of the shortest debates we ever had. But out of the abundance of caution, it is necessary, sir, to correct some wrong directioning in the hope that the person who has been veering so far off course sees the light and turns his ship around before he crashes into a rock. Whoever that person is, not singling anybody, sir. Sir, common sense again. 8, nationals are advised to bring their complete medical records to support the seamless continuity of healthcare services and to ensure that they receive appropriate medical care. 9, incoming nationals, I already spilled this one, sir, but incoming nationals who propose to work in Barbados will be required to register with the NISS to become participants and contributors in the National Social Security Program. This will be necessary if incoming nationals are to be able to benefit from transfer benefits that they've already secured for themselves in the NISS of other Caribbean member states. And the ID card is required for registration with
Point of order,
NIS.
sir. I'm wondering,
Brace yourself.
we like to be courteous towards each other, and you like that. And I'm wondering if, while the member is referring to a document, is it the proper thing to do to share it with us? I know he promised to make it a document of the House, but he is making it, he is placing it at the center of his presentation. And if not, it probably is the courteous thing to do to let us have sight of it so that I don't have to remember what the honorable member says. I think he's doing that now. And I thank him for the courtesy, Your Honor, at my insistence. Thank you, sir.
Sir, my humblest apologies to the chamber. Sir, I am glad the honorable member raised it because, sir, I was hesitant to offer him before I finished because the last time I offered him my hand, he ignored it in front of people and turned away. So I didn't think that if he did not have the courtesy to accept my hand in public, that he would accept a document from me. But, sir, you send the document. What I will do, sir, it is not customary, but, sir, I will actually pause for a minute just to allow the honorable member.
Him to atone for his sin of discourtesy.
Honorable member, was the point.
He can press on.
Honorable member, was the point of order. There's no point of order. Continue, honorable member, gracious.
I actually realize, sir, is the refusal is actually a trend because I saw it caught on camera that another operative of that side, sir, refused the hand of the Prime Minister offered to her following the St. James by-election. That was caught on camera, and I could not believe, sir, that that was what is going around now and being accepted as common courtesy, but I guess they're following the example of their leader. Anyway, sir.
Continue, honorable member.
Sir, 10, incoming nationals who possess valid driver's licenses for any of the 4 participating member states will be entitled to use the said driver's license in Barbados for 1 year or until the expiration of that license if sooner. Thereafter, the national must apply for a Barbados driver's license. The point of that, sir, is, you know, if people come in and we are accepting that you have free movement, right now visitors are able to drive in Barbados on their own national ID. So an American coming into Barbados can now drive on his ID. So it is common sense, sir, to extend this courtesy to those with whom we're trying to have a symbiotic relationship, sir. The non-national, 11. The non-national spouses and dependents of an incoming national will have the right to indefinitely reside and where relevant work in Barbados without the need of residency or work permit. They must, however, comply with all requirements applicable to the principal national. So all that the national has to do, those who are claiming under him have to do as well. And 12, all incoming nationals who choose to reside or work in Barbados be entitled to import their tools of trade, and these items must be imported within 6 months of registering with the Ministry of Labour and National Security. Sir, all of these benefits and obligations are reciprocal. So all of what I have read applies pretty much across the board in the other contributing territories, the other national states, with one exception. Whereas in Barbados, sir, you're not required to have a return ticket because there are no direct flights to Belize, and all travel to Belize is routed through somewhere else that requires a return ticket, even to transit through. Belize is the only one that requires residents to have a return ticket. Now, sir, if I go straight to the actual legislation itself, what does the legislation say? What does it purport to do? Clause 1, sir, provides the short title for the bill, and the bill is the Caribbean Community Free Movement of Nationals Bill 2025. Clause 2 is the definition clause, and, well, that's self-explanatory. Sir, clause 3 allows for an immigration officer to grant nationals of Dominica and St. Vincent and the Grenadines and their dependents, referred to Belize, Dominica, and St. Vincent, referred to as freely moving nationals, permission to remain in Barbados indefinitely, notwithstanding Section 13 of the Immigration Act, which provides for specific periods of stay. Entry into Barbados and the right to remain, however, is subject to general considerations relating to national security and public health in that act. And the clause also makes it clear that there is no need for freely moving nationals to satisfy the requirements of the Skilled Nationals Act. Sir, as I said, everybody coming into Barbados has to qualify in the exact same way that you did before. The benefits accrue after you pass through, after you've been landed. That's the term we use. After you've been landed in Barbados, allowed entry, that's when the benefits crystallize. But you can't be allowed entry if you offend any of the requirements for entry into Barbados. And those remain, sir. A country has the legal right to refuse entry to anybody based on national security concerns, public health concerns, and we also have, sir, in relation to persons who might find themselves a charge on the public purse. So if you come into Barbados and you would legitimately have been expected to pass through on vacation or whatnot, and you have sufficient to stay here, then you come. If you wish to stay longer, you stay longer. If you wish to reside, then you do what you have to do. If you come to Barbados and the immigration officers suspect that you cannot actually sustain yourself in Barbados, right, as they do now, you will not be allowed entry into Barbados. That, sir, is clause 3. Clause 4. This one is in relation to discharging members of the crew of a vessel who are freely moving nationals without having to satisfy themselves that the nationals have made arrangements to ensure they will not become a charge on public funds. So if people come off of a ship, sir, they're allowed to come in the exact same way. 5, provides for, this is clause 5, provides for freely moving nationals to be engaged or employed in Barbados without the need for work permit. I already dealt with that, sir. 6, that's the one that codifies, sir, in relation to the issue of the driver's license, that you can drive, use your national license for up to 12 months. 7, empowers the minister to amend the schedule to the bill which lists the member states to which the bill applies. And this clause would, sir, allow for other member states of the Caribbean community to be included where necessary. So rather than put, because we only have the first 4 states, so Barbados plus 3 others. So rather than put the other 3 persons into the act, which would then require, if, for example, Trinidad came on board, that we have to amend the act to include Trinidad. We put it in the schedule which can be amended by order. So there's no need to go back to amendments into the act. Clause 8 provides for the minister to make regulations under the bill should the need arise. Clause 9, sir, amends the Representation of People Act. This, sir, directly addresses the concerns that I've heard in some quarters about us bringing these people in to pad the voters list and to allow people to vote and pervert the course of the elections, which, for the record, I say is nonsense. Clause 9 amends the Representation of the People Act, Cap 12, to make it clear that freely moving nationals may vote in Barbados after residing in Barbados for 3 years. after residing in Barbados for 3 years is not open to interpretation. It is there. While the 3 member states listed and scheduled to the bill are also members of the Commonwealth, and citizens of the Commonwealth countries are currently allowed to vote under the Act, this amendment is necessary to allow dependents who are not citizens of the Commonwealth countries to vote as well. And for the avoidance of doubt, to vote as well after residing in Barbados for 3 years. Clause 10, sir, amends the Barbados Identity Management Act 2021 to require freely moving nationals who intend to remain in Barbados indefinitely to register under the Act and to obtain a Barbados identification card. And clause 11 provides for the bill once passed to deem to come into operation on the 1st of October 2025. Now, so I just wish to say something in relation to that. It may surprise people to know that the OECS region operates administratively for the most part. A number of the OECS countries have not enshrined the benefits and obligations of the OECS into their own domestic legislation. They have managed that regime administratively. What does that mean? That when they decided to do it, they just simply stopped prosecuting people for what would otherwise have been in breach of the ethos. We could have taken the option of doing the exact same thing. We said, you know what? To avoid confusion and to avoid persons who may deliberately misdirect themselves as to what this whole thing means, let us codify it and put it in legislation. Let us seek out all of the things that are touched and concerned by the free movement regime and make the corrections or clarifications or codifications as necessary. And that's what we did there. Now, in relation to the argument by persons, I keep saying persons when I actually mean person, but I'll be general, sir. Specifically in relation to the comments by persons that we had no right to allow people indefinite stay in Barbados from the 1st of October. The Immigration Act, Cap 190, Section 13(1)(b). I give you the actual section, Section 13(1)(b). It allows for CARICOM nationals to get 6 months entry on arriving at the airport. It allows for them to get 6 months entry. Sir, at one point in time, that section was challenged because I think it was up to 6 months or a maximum of 6 months. And in the Shanique Murray case, if you remember, the argument was that up to 6 months could also mean 0. And after the court made its ruling, across the board, the Immigration Department applied the philosophy, and in accordance with the direction of the court, that CARICOM nationals coming in should get 6 months. So we didn't go a maximum of 6 months anymore, we went 6 months. So your allocated entry into Barbados is 6 months. If you wish to leave before that, you're free to do so. If you wish to stay longer, then you apply for an extension and you get the extension or whatnot. Section 13(7). Without limiting or affecting the operation of this section, the minister may grant a person special permission to remain in Barbados on such terms and conditions as he thinks fit. The Immigration Department, sir, was involved at all steps of the way. I had numerous meetings with the Immigration Department. They knew what we were aiming to do on the 1st of October. They had suggestions as to how we should manage it. They had suggestions of what should happen at the airport. They even made input, sir, into the same document I read from, which was at the airport the day before. Now, sir, in accordance with that section, I formally wrote to and sent an email to the Chief Immigration Officer advising her that effective immediately, all nationals of the listed states are entitled to enter Barbados and be afforded an indefinite stay on entry into Barbados. And that must be reflected in all immigration records. That was sent the morning of the 1st before any plane landed. So when the first person landed in Barbados, that directive had been communicated and the Chief Immigration Officer confirmed to me, because we spoke on it, that she had received it, Minister, and we will act in accordance with your direction. So, sir, I have spoken thus much to assure the public of Barbados there's no subterfuge. We're not trying to pervert anything. We're not trying to get anything by surreptitious means. This government is simply doing what other governments and regions have done before, advancing the cause of free movement, moving towards some kind of social unity that benefits all in the Caribbean. And Barbados is a country, one of the countries that stands to benefit the most. We need people in Barbados. We need to increase the skill sets in Barbados rather than looking beyond to people who don't necessarily look like us and who don't have the same background to us. Our first feed of stock should come from those closest to us with whom we share a similar experience. Sir, I spoke to the Minister of Labour, and I've also spoken to the Minister responsible for infrastructure, the Senior Minister responsible for infrastructure. A vast number of workers in the construction sector, the skilled person, the artisans, the carpenters, the masons, come from St. Vincent, come from Guyana, come from in the Caribbean. We have already recognized the deficit in Barbados, the labor deficit, where that is concerned. And those persons have been seamlessly integrated. They came as skilled nationals. In some instances, some of them came on work permits before the skilled national regime, but they came as skilled nationals. We are now saying you need to jump through more hoops. If you are working in St. Vincent and you think you can play your trade here, or there's a need for you, or you respond to advertisement and you're accepted, then come. Sir, there's a story of a boy who cried wolf. And he cried wolf so often and so hard and so long that it began to annoy everybody. And he became the nuisance that kept crying wolf. So that when there was actually a need, when a wolf actually arrived on his doorstep, nobody took him on because he raised the alarm too often without merit. Sir, we ain't getting a flood of people coming in. And if you think about it, sir, when persons look to leave a country, they have a plan. If I'm looking to leave to go and find work somewhere else, Chancellor, I would have done an interview, I would have put an application, somebody is interested in me. I have a plan and I go, I know where I'm going to stay. It's the same with people coming here. The question is also being raised, what does this mean in relation to the housing stock and whatnot? So the government is obliged to find housing for Bajans. The benefits that accrue to free-moving nationals are the right to come in and remain indefinitely, the right to work without a work permit, so the right to educate your children without a student visa, and the ability to get primary medical care and emergency medical care. We ain't saying nothing about housing. Most of the people who come in to work in Barbados from the CARICOM come in and rent. They used to rent in and around the city before it was purged. They used to spend money in the shops before they were handcuffed and asked to leave. They used to participate in national activities before they were bundled up and escorted out. We are here trying, sir, to protect Barbados, protect our way of life, enhance the competitiveness of our country, and to grow our economy. And this, sir, is but one other step in that process. Let us make the ability for our friends and co-nationals from other Caribbean territories able to come to Barbados with the minimum of effort and to play the trade or to live here. Let us make it seamless for Bajans who seek that opportunity abroad to be able to get on a plane, get on a boat, go and play their trade somewhere else. You might not want to go and work and live indefinitely in another Caribbean territory. But I might have products that I wish to sell. I might manufacture something. I might have a concept that I'm trying to develop. I should be free to hop on a plane and go and try to have my idea or my products or my services recognized by somebody else. It is reciprocal. We can do it too. But you know what, sir? Anything that appears to be advancing the cause of Barbados or Barbadians seems to be a threat to the boy who cried wolf. Anything, sir, that seems to be a good idea that may gain traction, and that may make people say, you know what, this government is actually doing well, the government is on the right track. It appears to be a threat to the man who cried wolf. Sir, despite the cries of wolf, we firmly believe that we are doing a good thing. We're on the right path. This legislation, sir, contains no mysteries. It contains no menaces. And it's simply codifying what will make this system work more efficiently and to the benefit of all the participating nationals and all the participating states. Sir, I have read it, reread it, I had a hand in drafting it, and I am comfortable to commend it to this chamber. I hear, sir, beg that this be read a second time. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Christchurch South.
I'm obliged to you. I'm obliged to you, Mr. Speaker. And I normally exercise the good courtesy of saying good morning to all parliamentary colleagues. And I intend to include the Honourable Member for St. George South. I'm very happy at his presence with us this morning with his new neighbour. Your Honor, one of the remarkable features of the address by the Honourable Member for Christchurch East is that it was querulous. He appeared to be quarreling, if not with you, sir, since he's addressing you. And he certainly is not quarreling with us. So maybe he's quarreling with himself. There was a certain undisguised anger as he plowed his way through legislation with which the Honourable Member may be uncomfortable. One's conscience does escape through the mouth from time to time. But I will attempt to answer him with a certain equanimity and composure, since the public will still want answers to certain questions, and the Honourable Member may have failed in his very angry presentation to provide those answers. And what we do note as well is that he emphasized this sheet of paper. I don't know what he called it, a protocol. I call it a protocol. He spent about half an hour going through the protocol and far less time dealing with the legislation. And in a parliament, it is expected that the Honourable Member would have dealt with the legislation. Since this document, which he, by his own confession, in micromanagement of a department, took to the airport, he says he went down to the airport. Hey, first time I hear.
Sir, the Honourable Member is misleading this chamber. So I never said he took the document to the airport. I had no hand in that at all. That went through the proper channels to get there. I actually first received one of these days after I went to the airport.
Well, the honorable member does confess that someone took him to the airport and, according to him, so that he could see how his department was functioning.
But honorable member, if you have not heard those words out of the mouth of the member for Christ itself, please do not opinion what you say. If you speak to specificity, please. Continue, honorable member for Christ itself.
I'm obliged to you, sir. Yes. The honorable member, and I did not write it. I was so amused that I stopped writing at that point, but I have some other things written to which I attribute to the honorable member. But he did say that he went to the airport. I thought I'd written that one. Yes, he did say that he went to the airport to see how things were going up there. That he boasted that he is in charge of the immigration department and he wanted to see for himself how things were going. Well, he said down there. So I don't know if where he came from. Most people go up to the airport. He went down to the airport. But that is neither here nor there. But the point I was making is that the honorable member focused more of his attention on a document that has no legal force, no legal effect. I don't know when the visitors to this country receive this, if they receive it on the aircraft, if they receive it at the immigration counter. We don't know. But it is brought to this parliament today and not handed to the other side, and he proceeds to read it as if it is some gold mine. Your Honor, you can ignore it for what it is worth, and it is worthless. What is of greater worth in here today is what this government intends to make the law. And we are going to deal with that very shortly. But before we do that, we must remind this parliament that, like the other side, we remain committed and fully committed, not in any patronizing way. We remain fully committed not only to the idea but to the practice of regional integration. And it is not for us on this side to boast as to our support for regional integration, because the initiatives in regional integration did not begin with parliaments nor politicians. The initiatives in regional integration began with the people and began with the ordinary people of this region. Certainly fishermen who were traveling across these seas for many, many years, certainly from Barbados and going as far as Tobago. It began with the hucksters who were going on the vessels, landing here, just across that square, selling their mangoes, and going back to St. Lucia. That is where the initiatives, the exercises, the efforts in regional integration began. Regional integration began with the people. And that would have motivated the statement by the well-known Jamaican political economist, Professor George Beckford, when he said that the people of the Caribbean have long been integrated. It is only the politicians who don't know it. So that when we come here today and we engage or hear the sanctimony of regional integration, the ideals of regional integration and what we are doing for regional integration. That did not begin with any politician, and it certainly did not begin with the other side. And perhaps the other side needs to be reminded of this. And if the other side is heard to say that the high point of regional integration was the 1958 to 62 experiment, they are historically and philosophically in error. Of course, I concede that the other side did refer to cricket, and I will help him along that path. That long before the federal experiment, and we like to refer to it as an experiment, long before that experiment, there were others, non-politicians, who were along the path of integration. And in 1928, the West Indies cricket team played its first test. In 3 years' time, in 2028, we in this region will celebrate 100 years of cricket integration. And it is not only about cricket, because C.L.R. James reminds us, what do they know of cricket who only cricket know? And of course, he wants to tell us, and he wanted to tell us, that what occurred on the field is reflective of what occurs in the wider society. But let us not digress. Let us come back to the point that this government cannot be heard to take any credit for the regionalist movement, and that this legislation is not any high water mark in the regionalist initiative. Now, I pause again because I heard a noise. And I will remind you, Your Honor, that there is a rule in the standing orders against interruptions while a speaker is on his feet. There may be no rule against
Honourable Member, am I hearing you correctly? Am I hearing you correctly as it relates to interruptions, Honourable Member? You're actually speaking to that? Continue, please. Please continue. Please continue. I thought that was, you want me to express judicial deafness. I don't believe it came from your mouth. Continue nonetheless, sir.
You today, sir, hopefully will hear a debate that is, and I'm going to use a word that you used some time ago, that is civil. Because I think now, and I hope that you have reached the point as a speaker in which you wish to urge the members to rise to the occasion and to debate what is before the House, and not to treat the occasion of debate for personal assaults and personal invective. I do know that there are some persons who seem to have some difficulty speaking beyond 2 minutes unless they descend into personal invective and personal assault. If that is a deficit, that finds itself afflicting some members, well, let them keep quiet. Every week you come to this chamber, and you try to pursue a debate based on what is before the House. Some, and I am myself not going to use invective, but some honorable member, and more than one, tries to engage the discussion, and when those individuals become intellectually and academically tired, it then becomes an occasion for personal assault, personal abuse, invective. Let them keep quiet today. Let them keep quiet while they're sitting, and if they stand and try to contribute to a discussion that requires some intellectual and academic and philosophical import when they find themselves fatigued. Please, Your Honor, let them sit. Look, this place, and I'm very serious about this. And I'm going to look at the wall when I say it, because those who the cap fits, let him wear it.
But Honourable Member, you spoke of being civil. You spoke of being civil.
I'm looking at the wall, sir.
And you are accustomed in this chamber of camaraderie. You are, yes, you are. You engage in camaraderie, Honourable Member, in this chamber. So you can continue, but you do not need to become affected by any side show that you hear. You understand what it is in this chamber. You have been a member since 2018. Right, and you know what happens. So continue, Honourable Member.
You hear them already? You hear them?
Honourable Member, that is your friend that you. Honourable Member, that is the friend you speak to all the time. Honourable Member.
Oh, you heard it too, sir?
No, Honourable Member, that is your friend that you speak to.
You heard the discourtesy.
That is your friend that you are very courteous to, who is also courteous to you. That is your friend. You make it known in this honourable chamber that is your friend. You give her kudos all of the time. You praise her in this chamber, Honourable Member.
You sound jealous, sir.
No, exactly. I am.
Well, I'll praise you too.
No, I don't need praising. She praises you, Honourable Member. That is your close friend.
But I was not referring to the Honourable Member for St. Thomas.
See, you know who you're talking to. Imagine that.
I know of whom I speak. When that Honourable Member rises to speak in here, I don't hear any personal invective. So this is a warning to them today, in the hearing of the public, and I'm not pointing at them, that when they are sent in here to curse people, whoever they are, when they are sent in here to curse people, they do more injury to their own personal, political, and professional reputations than they may be aware of. Let us have an uplifting debate today. And if at the end of my speech, and I give them my ear, and I hear one personal insult, I am going to do what I do every week. I am going to pack these bags and leave and let them speak into the air. This is a parliament.
Honourable Member, please continue. Honourable Member, please continue.
I am letting the public know. I am giving the public notice as to what, you hear him again. I am giving the Attorney General now. The Attorney General, who had a word to say about this legislation.
Honourable Member, are you not continuing the debate in relation to the legislation?
Yes, I am.
Please do then.
And I am doing so, Your
Please
Honor.
do.
I am doing so, Your Honor, by giving notice to them that the time has come in this country when parliamentary debates must be conducted with civility.
Honourable Member, as it relates to the conduct of Parliament, I am the sole authority. I determine that. No one else in this chamber is vested with the authority. I have complete and sole authority. I am the arbitrator. No one else can fit in these shoes. I determine.
I intend to drag them to high levels of debate. I am going to do that. And I want them to understand that when I finish my disquisition on this bill today, that if they have an answer to what I have said, let it relate itself to the content of the bill. Good. It's just a warning.
It is Monday, not Tuesday. I think there's a problem.
Indeed,
Today is
indeed.
Monday. Continue, I remember.
Look, and it is Monday indeed. Normally we come here on Tuesdays. But I was told that we are here today because we are trying to accommodate ministerial travel.
Honourable Member, please continue.
That is not a secret. The public must understand why we are here today. And we are here today to accommodate ministerial travel. Every week, a private jet is taken off at the expense.
Honourable member, please continue.
Yes, I can tell the public everything. I'm going to tell the public everything.
Please continue the debate.
This debate should have been taking place tomorrow.
Honourable member, you have no control over that. You're not vested with that control. Honourable, please debate what is before you.
Let us come back to the debate, sir. And I recognize that we should have been here tomorrow, but they dragged the government here today because somebody has another excursion at public expense. At public expense, a private jet will take off within the next few hours at great expense to the public, and that's why we're here today. So let them come in and curse when they come. Now, I was on the question of integration, regional integration, and I was saying to the Parliament that no party can by itself claim ownership in the regional integration exercise. Reference is made, of course, and I expect it from the other side, to Federation, 1958 to 62. And if the students, the young students of history must know that what we call an experiment was flawed and destined for failure because it was a political institution without a material or economic base. And therefore it was always destined to fail. And that is why it was so easy for the two major actors in Caribbean integration to first remove themselves, Jamaica and Trinidad. And how history seems to repeat itself. Because two conspicuous absentees from this arrangement today are Jamaica and Trinidad. So that the government comes here through the querulous voice of the Honourable Member for Christchurch East and tells you what a fantastic project this will be for the Caribbean and for Caribbean integration. And not once has he explained the absence of these two important figures, countries, in the exercise of regionalism. The people of this country expected to hear, by way of explanation, why Jamaica is absent, why Trinidad is absent, why is Guyana also absent? Are the people of this region not entitled to that explanation? Are they not? You cannot discuss CARIFTA and then CARICOM and the Caribbean single market and economy unless you discuss those three countries. In addition to Barbados, who were at the foundation of the modern regional institutional arrangement. I say institutional arrangement because my reference is obviously to CARIFTA, CARICOM. And not a word from this government. Not a word. The people of Barbados are entitled to an explanation as to why this movement, or rather, I correct myself, as to whether this movement lacks its credibility for the absence of those three important countries. Why are they absent? No explanation. What we do know is that Guyana has just had an election, Jamaica has just had an election, and Trinidad has just had an election. And we are not going to disguise our association between, or the correlation between this legislative initiative And elections, we are not going to disguise that, and we are going to say that without apology. This government must stop sneaking around this country, passing legislation with disguised intent. And I want to tell them that Barbadians believe that not every motive and intent has been spelled out across the letter of this legislation. I'll come to that later, Your Honor. But we were making the point, further to Beckford's thesis, Professor Beckford's thesis, that the integration movement is not owned by any government, including this one, and least of all this government. And so there was the failure of federation. And recognizing visionary leaders in the late 60s, recognizing the failure of that movement and the reason for the failure of that movement, agreed, including Trinidad and Jamaica. Interestingly enough, the two who pulled out of federation, they joined together and agreed on CARIFTA, Caribbean Free Trade Association. The emphasis then was on economics, trade. And that became CARICOM, which became the single market and economy, because they recognized that the basis of any regionalist movement should relate itself to the economy, which is what the fishermen were doing, which is what the hucksters were doing. Not superimposing on a society a parliament without teeth, and that is not to offend the federal parliament. That is an objective critique of the federal parliament, which, as I said before, and it is my thesis, it was destined for failure because of that fundamental flaw in its structure. It was a political institution without an economic foundation. And of course, the Honourable Member for Christchurch East referred to it, cricket. And the Honourable Member for Christchurch East referred to the University of the West Indies. And he is correct. And he referred to the Caribbean Court of Justice, and he is correct. And there were several other institutions to which he may have referred. But of course, his references were restricted to the formal. And one knows him to be a man given to a lifestyle of, he likes parties and so on, but that's his business. And he would know that Calypso and Carnival music has been a unifying force in this region. It is not a formal institution, but he knows that as children, our parents were tuning our radios to 610, and I think Radio Guardian 70 something, 705, I think, from way back in the 60s, to hear the results of the Calypso competition in Trinidad, when Sparrow and Duke and these people were winning. And that was an informal institution which was joining the Caribbean. The Calypso King of Trinidad, in other words, became a regional figure, certainly within the southern and eastern Caribbean. And that too was a unifying force within the Caribbean. Informal, but the cultural institution, the arts, music, dance even, were unifying this region for a long time. I say all of that to say, Your Honor, that I don't think this government now will pretend that it has been any major actor in the regionalist movement. And I don't come here to claim credit on behalf of the Democratic Labour Party. The record is clear. The record is clear. And I do not engage in futile exercises. And it would be an exercise in futility to weigh the respective contributions. That is, not only is it futile, it is fickle. Oh, who had the greatest contribution to the regionalist exercise? And if I'm to be kind to the other side, I will concede that the other side, under their expelled former leader, Right Honourable Oinatha, who went to his grave, and he wasn't a member of the Barbados Labour Party. He was not, and I want to remind them of this, that when they come in here feigning praise on that gentleman, I am going to remind them on every occasion that I speak that he left the Barbados Labour Party, cursing the Barbados Labour Party, disavowing the Barbados Labour Party, I wouldn't go any further on that. But his establishment, or his initiative in the establishment of the Caribbean Court of Justice, has done so much for the institution of law in the Caribbean. I don't think non-lawyers really appreciate the magnitude of the contribution of the Caribbean Court of Justice to law and justice in the Caribbean. I can tell you, Your Honor, and you know this, that several appellants could not have found the doorstep of an appellate court beyond our local court of appeal were it not for the Caribbean Court of Justice. A lot of men up there in St. Philip at Dodds would either be on death row or facing indefinite stays in a prison without access to a court, an appellate court beyond the local court of appeal. In other words, access to the Privy Council in England was prohibitive. Somebody asked me a few years ago, you ever went to the Privy Council in England? And when I say no, they seem to think that it was a badge of dishonor. My badge of honor is that I participated in a double appellate system that was local, that was Caribbean, and that offered the opportunity for the poorest man in this country and in this region to find appellate recourse at the very highest level, and at a level that was equivalent and in some cases superior to the Privy Council in Britain. And I will say this without offending anyone, but it was known that Privy Council decisions coming from the Commonwealth were written over a few pages. And the Caribbean Court of Justice, you could get decisions written over 100 pages. Is it proper then for me to say that the Caribbean Court of Justice was taking appellants from the Caribbean a lot more seriously than the Privy Council in England was taking them? Is it unfair for me to say that? Is it improper for me to say that? That is an objective legal opinion based on the jurisprudence that I have read and in which I have participated. The point is, Your Honor, whoever opened that Caribbean Court of Justice has done this Caribbean a great deal of good. Whoever opened that University of the West Indies, which sent most of us here, did an exceptionally good job for this region. And so, it is no occasion for partisan glories, and I think the Honourable Member for Christchurch East himself recognized this. This is no occasion for partisan glories. What this becomes, though, sir, is an opportunity for us to make inquiry into what comes before this Parliament today, and to ask ourselves the question, is this genuinely integrationist, or is there another motive? Am I going to be insulted today for saying that? And I promise them again, if I hear one insult, I am going through that door. I am not putting up with any more foolishness in here. I am. May I proceed, sir?
Honourable, I have not stopped you.
You have not stopped
You
me.
sat down.
You know, despite all their faults, they're still funny, you know. And that's why I laugh.
Honourable, they're your friends.
They're not.
They're your friends.
They are not.
They're your friends.
The Attorney General is saying that we are not friends. Please accept the evidence of the learned Attorney General. There's no friendship in here. Because as long as this government continues to offend the people of Barbados, they cannot be my friends. Thank you, sir.
That is your friend. That is your friend.
I come now. I think we may have reached agreement that the regionalist exercise, or no party can claim exclusive ownership in the regionalist exercise. If I continue with that, sir, much of what I say will become cliched. So we will depart from that and come to the substance of this legislation. And I did note that the Honourable Member for Christchurch East today came with two documents. He came with, I don't know how to describe it. I had to beg him to see it. He came with something which we probably call a protocol that he is handing out to immigration officers. You know, we had a confession in here today of micromanagement. That's what we had. And I want to say to the Honourable Member through you, sir, that a minister must try not to micromanage a department that falls under him. And there is a constitutional and legal reason why they should not. A lot of ministers probably don't understand that those who work in ministries within their portfolio are not their employees. They're not. They are not their employees. So for the Honourable Member for Christchurch, that he went up there to see how his department was functioning, he was wrong. He was wrong. That is the business of the permanent secretary. But you know, Your Honor, these are matters of law, and I am not here as any tutor in law.
I remember sometimes they cannot help you. I try.
I don't need any help, sir.
That is your friend. That is your friend.
I don't need any help, sir. We come back to the presentation of the Honourable Member for Christchurch East. And we are grateful to him for having provided not only the context, but the reason for this legislation. And he began by saying, we are facing a population crisis. That is where it begins. So the public of Barbados, the people of Barbados are hearing that we need floods of people to come in here because our population is too small, so bring them. We are facing a population crisis, and I quote him further, everybody accepts that there's a crisis. The question is, what do we do about it? And the government's answer to this assertion that we have a population crisis is to bring people in here. And I'm going to say what the Act says that immigration officers should do, because I rather think that the Honourable Member for Christchurch East may have misinterpreted, if not misled, this chamber as to the role of the immigration officers, but I'll come to that. Now, when that becomes the justification for this scheme, bringing people because we have a population crisis, the Honourable Member for Christchurch East may want to retract or to express regret, if he is so contrite, for the statement that he made in advance of October 1st. And I'll come to October 1st again shortly. Interviewed by a very perspicacious media to explain this scheme between four countries, Barbados, Belize, St. Vincent, and Dominica. The honourable member, and I will not let him forget this, and he can rise to his feet if I am misquoting him. He said to the media, and it was broadcast to the world, that the young university graduates, if they can't find work here, let them go. Let them go and look for work in St. Vincent, Dominica, or Belize. You can get vexed, honourable member for St. Thomas, but look, Your Honour, he said that. This is a gentleman, and I insist that he's a gentleman.
Honourable member for...
The honourable member is misleading the chamber. If the honourable, sorry, that's the point of order. If the honourable member wishes to quote me, let him quote. I'm not going to give him my words. Let him quote me exactly. I assure you, that was not what I said.
Okay.
If he's quoting me, sir, let him quote.
All right. I will try to summarize what the honourable member is reported to have said to the media. I cannot give a precise quote, but the honourable member has gone on record as saying to the young people of this country between the ages of 18 and 25 of tertiary and high secondary education, and by high secondary I mean fifth form and up. If you can't find a job in this country, leave. If it sounds callous.
Sir.
Honourable member.
Sir.
Hold on.
Wait,
Honourable member for Christchurch South. The honourable member for Christchurch has already indicated that he didn't. That is not the quote. He said that. So unless you can give me the quote, please do not repeat. You say you were going to summarize what he is reported to have said.
Yes.
Please.
Yes. Since the honourable member is keen on rising, let the honourable member say to Barbadians what was the advice he gave to young people in this country, young job aspirants. I will sit and hear him. But I am saying to this chamber, and I'm reminding this country, that the honourable member for Christchurch East told the young people of this country a few weeks ago, if you can't find a job here, leave. Go to St. Vincent, go to Dominica, go to Belize.
Honourable member.
I will hear him, sir.
Honourable member, I will not allow you to repeat that this 3 times. Hold on, honourable member for Christchurch South. The honourable member for Christchurch, he's already said he didn't make that quote. Please do not use that quote in here again.
Sorry.
That's what I'm saying.
I asked her to be struck from the record, sir.
If he repeats it again, I ask him to leave the chamber.
Your Honour.
No, please, because it's 3 times. If you do not have the quote, do not repeat it. You do not have the quote. If you can get a record of the transcript, you're free to so do. I remember, you know the law. You want the cat reporter? If you want the record, get the record. Do not misquote. Do I remember? You do not have the quote. Continue, please.
Thank you, sir. I have conceded that I do not have the precise quote.
But then you don't have the precise quote. Don't make the quote because you don't know what it is. And they ask that it be struck from the record, sir.
I'm obliged to you, sir. But what Barbadians do know is that the honourable member for Christchurch East, and I want him to stay in his seat, I know this is a difficult endurance for him when he is reminded as to the effect of what he said to young people in this country less than a month ago. And the people of Barbados know, without knowing the precise quote, they can get it was in the Nation or which one? I think Barbados Today had it as well. CBC probably would not carry it. But I am not quoting him precisely, sir, and please understand this. I am not quoting him precisely, but I invite the honourable member for Christchurch East to interrupt me and to explain what it is he said to the young people of Barbados in relation to their aspirations to work in Barbados. He can interrupt me now. And did he not say to them, and this is not a quote, did he not say to them, leave Barbados and go to Belize, St. Vincent and Dominica? I am prepared to be interrupted. And if he does not interrupt me now, he is taken to have accepted what I am saying as my interpretation. Let him speak.
Honourable member.
I actually, sir, at this point, because it's gone in so many times, sir, it cannot be allowed to stand. And I'm asking that Your Honor rule that be struck from the record.
I have already said that.
Yeah, well, look,
I have already ruled.
Your Honor, we all accept your
I
ruling.
have already ruled.
And if the honourable member for Christchurch East is now telling the public of Barbados that he did not say words to that effect, not a precise quote, I don't have the paper here with me, because I really could have brought it, but I did not expect that the honourable member for Christchurch East would have denied in here that he said words to that effect.
Honourable
He invited young people in Barbados to leave.
Honourable member, do not use that quote in here again. This is about the 5th time, and it is, I don't use the term disturbing, but you are a mature individual.
Very.
And I do believe that you read the stand. I do believe that you read the standing orders. I know that. I know that. So continue.
Yeah.
Continue,
They
please.
are ashamed. He is ashamed.
Honourable member, continue, please.
Thank you, sir. He is ashamed. I can laugh, you know. But I am backing down. I am not backing down.
Honourable member, could you kindly continue?
Yes, I will continue.
Honourable member, the stand order speaks to repetition. You have said that 5 times.
Well, I was asked to withdraw the quote.
Right. So, but you have said that about 5 times. Continue, please.
I want to know, a ruling has been given. I want to know if the effect of the ruling is to embrace the honourable member if he is saying that he did not invite the young people of Barbados, as I have indicated. Has he distanced himself from the statement? Is he saying that the statement was not made? Is he saying that the media misquoted him? What is he saying? And if he cannot say that, he must accept that what the media reported is an accurate reflection of what they said he said. And he is not going to get up to his feet and deny that he said something in relation to job aspirations among young people in this country. He's not going to do that. Because you had a whole 2 weeks to do it and you haven't done it over the last 2 weeks, and now come into a parliament to deny it. He is coming to a parliament. The honourable member for Christchurch East is coming to a parliament today to deny that he invited the people, not quoting him.
Please, if you go there, you can. If you go there, my honourable member,
I'm going to say it in language which he may love. He extended an invitation to certain young persons in this country to depart in peace on a job. Look, you don't comb your beard. And that relates itself. You have accused me, sir, of having said it 5 times.
I've not accused you. I've told you.
You've told me I said it 5
I've
times.
not accused you at all. You're not an accused person, honourable member.
But here it is, Your Honour. Well, I am going to accuse not the honourable member of having said something like that. I am going to accuse the editors of the media houses of having quoted an honourable member here, whoever he is. I am going to accuse them. I'm not accusing anybody in here any longer. I am going to accuse them of having written a story in which they were invited, the young people of Barbados, and you know, they were invited to leave. But I will say this as well to the public, because I am addressing the public as much as I'm addressing you. You are hearing me immediately, but I want the public to hear me, and I want the public to hear that they were interviewed, that in the aftermath of the statement made, whoever made it, the young people of the University of the West Indies went into rebellion. They can stoop as much as they want. The truth kills them. The truth kills them. And Your Honor, when those young persons were interviewed, they did not speak highly of this government. Is it so difficult to hear those truths? Is it so difficult to become aware of how much this government is offending people in Barbados? Is it so much to hear how much or how poorly the young people of this country think about this government with this initiative? that there must be a fundamental contradiction between liberal invitation, and we don't object to liberal invitation as an ideal because we have indicated to them before that regional integration began with fishermen, hucksters, West Indies cricket teams, musicians, all manner of mankind. But in comes this government in 2025, and I'm saying this now, I'm not quoting anybody. In comes this government in 2025 and causes a rebellion among young university students in this country. They are on record, Your Honor. They are on record as having disavowed this government for banishing them from this country. If you want a job, go somewhere else. I ain't quoting a fella. I am not quoting a fella, and I will not be interrupted by noisy people who cannot get up and pilot the legislation properly, but when they're sitting trying to interrupt me, you come in here and try to pilot the
Honourable member,
couldn't speak about it.
Honourable member.
The honourable member for St. Joseph could not get the wiretapping legislation.
Honourable member. But honourable, you do not even want to sit and listen. Honourable member, you are not allowed to refer to honourable members as you or he. Honourable member, it will not be tolerated under my watch. Continue.
They're lively today. They're lively today. They can't take any criticism. They want me to come in here and agree with what they do. Well, I'm a madman.
Honourable member, continue, please.
Thank you, sir. And they find it hard to accept. They find it hard to accept that 100% of young people at the University of the West Indies who were interviewed despise this government for what this government is doing to them. That this government is failing to provide a foundation of employment for the young people in this country, for the young people of the University of the West Indies and the Barbados Community College. And they are ashamed. They are ashamed, and justifiably ashamed. Thank you very much. What must upset them, sir? What must upset them is that you and I laugh. And you and I are not distracted by the jokes. You and I laugh, but I'm coming back. I'm coming back to tell the honourable member of Christchurch East, who brought a bill in here today, that the people of Barbados and the young people of Barbados are expressing disavowal, not of regional integration, but they're expressing disavowal of the intent to banish them to other countries. That while this government is coming here saying that there's a population crisis and there are needs for people here, the same government is expressing a desire to expel our young people. I say so. Object to that. I say that this government, by its words and actions, is on the cusp of expulsion of young talent. And that is why the young people of the University of the West Indies went into rebellion. How many times do you want me to say it? I will say it again if you want me to. Now I'm going to come to another point of the honourable member's speech. And this one is interesting. Some time ago, we held a press conference. I don't really refer to extra parliamentary activities in here, but this needs to be said. We held a press conference and told this government, we gave this government good legal advice, that you cannot implement a scheme further to a treaty, which is an agreement between two countries, unless you legislate it. We told the government that. We knew that it was good legal advice. and we gave it to the government. You know, the government is coming back here today with legislation, and the honourable member for Christchurch East, he has to take his blows today. The Attorney General sidestepped this and handed it to him. So he has to be the one to take the blows today. In his review of the legislation, he has I beg your pardon, he has conveniently avoided Section 11 of the legislation. Permit me to read it, sir. Permit me to read it, sir. This act shall be deemed to have come into operation on the first day of October 2025.
With respect, sir, the honourable member is misleading the chamber. We can call for the record. I specifically, when I went through the various clauses, ended with that one. Clause 11 provides for the bill once passed to be deemed to come into operation on the 1st of October 2025. You can call for the record. There was no avoidance of anything. If the member is at a loss as to what to say, then you should just stop and let's go to lunch.
Yes. You want lunch? I'm not surprised you want lunch. You're the first honourable member.
Honourable member, continue, please.
He said he wants lunch, sir. Well, let him go. He may have quoted it, and I should properly accuse him of not having explained to this chamber and to this country why this bill, which he hopes to become an act, will be retroactive. And it gives justification to the charge that we made. We told this government, we told this errant government, we told this error-prone government that you could not implement the terms of a treaty unless you had legislated. That is straight law. That is straight law. You cannot implement the terms of a treaty unless it becomes incorporated into local law. That is straight law for those of us who did international law. And I don't accuse the honourable member of having done international law, but he obviously heard what we said, and the fact that he has brought this after our press conference and backdated it to October 1st is evidence that he now accepts that what we were saying was true. And that at this very moment, with the 10 or 11 people in Barbados, according to his reckoning, he also said today, in disappointment, I quoted him, "We are not getting any flood of people coming in." How disappointing. How disappointing for a government that was looking for large numbers to distribute them. I suspect they were looking for at least 60 to put 2 in each constituency, but that has not happened. I understand they've only had 11, and therefore the honourable member admits that today. But we make the point that what we said just subsequent to October 1st, when this government said that a scheme was in place, we answered and said to the Immigration Department, BRA, and the Electoral and Boundaries Commission that no scheme is in place because Parliament had not intervened. Parliament had not passed the law. And this government impliedly now accepts what we said because they're backdating it to October 1st. But of course, I quote the honourable member for Christchurch East, I beg your pardon, of having said today, and I quote, "We are correcting missteps, if there were any. We are putting wrong things right. We are putting all the ducks in a row." Much as it pains the honourable member to hear his own words thrown back at him, I am going to read it again. We are correcting missteps, if there were any. We are putting wrong things right. We are putting all the ducks in a row. Is that not a fair commentary as to how this government has been functioning, certainly over the last year? Is this not reminiscent of cybercrime, which
Continue, honourable member. Continue, honourable member.
you don't hear a lot from that honourable member?
Honourable member, continue, please.
You don't hear a lot from that honourable member. The last time he made a noise was when he took a lash in his head up at Foundation School last year. Let us proceed, sir. Some food fight they had up there. Some food fight they had up there. But I was saying, Your Honor, that statement, and I know the honourable member for Christchurch East is a little embarrassed now. I can see it on his face. And I want to say to him, to be too embarrassed, because he is a part of a government and it is not all his fault. If he looks to his left, I direct you, sir, to look to your left and to cast your eyes on the author of large governmental and parliamentary error, legislative error, I beg your pardon, that has been committed by this government over the last year. And I was saying that the cybercrime bill is now in cyberspace as evidence of the government's ineptitude. And if you don't like the word ineptitude, incompetence. Where's the cybercrime bill? Where's the tint law that has been suspended on 2 or 3 occasions? Where's the wiretapping bill that y'all brought in here and boasted about? And you, him, sir, honourable member for Christchurch East, told this country that wiretapping, phone tapping, that government was listening to people's telephone conversations for more than a decade. Was it easy to say that? Well, it was not easy for the people of Barbados to hear that this government was tapping people's phones for a long time. And I sat here in disbelief that a minister of government would admit that this government was tapping people's phones and that they had only brought the legislation to give legitimacy to what was unlawful and immoral and unchristian. Listening to people's telephone conversation, what y'all wanted to hear. Who's supporting the BLP?
Honourable member, please continue as it relates to the debate, please.
And so, beg your pardon? And so, Your Honour, when the honourable member says that this government is correcting missteps, when the honourable member concedes that this government has done a lot of wrong, not only legislative wrong, but immoral and legal wrong, and that today this law is coming, this act of parliament, this bill is coming to correct the wrong that was done. And the honourable member for Christchurch East Central must now be brought into a position in which he's admitting that what this government announced on October 1st was wrong. It was without a legislative foundation. And the honourable member for Christchurch East is so candid today to now admit that. And he admits that the reason for Section 11 of backdating this to October the 1st is a concession that his trip to the airport to micromanage the immigration department was a trip in futility. It was an errand that was farcical. It had no legal weight. His micromanagement of the immigration department was a legal error. And I say to you today, sir, that he has admitted that it was a legal error. This is not a government with any good record in legislation. Look at all the evidence. It is there. I went back to cybercrime. I went back to tint, with which this government is still threatening the people of Barbados. Tint legislation. What y'all trying to do? What is this government trying to do to the people of Barbados? Merely bringing legislation here as evidence of ineptitude, as evidence of their inability to run this country properly. And this legislation today is yet further evidence of this government's inability to run this country when they implement a system before legislation. It is as serious as that. It is as serious as that. We are putting all the ducks in a row. What does that mean? The young people at the University of the West Indies are ducks? That y'all are putting in a row to shoot down their ambitions, their legitimate ambitions, when you admit that they can't find a job in this country in accordance with their qualifications and education? Are they ducks in a row? The last time I saw ducks in a row, somebody was handed a gun to shoot them down. To shoot them down. Your Honor, I am not being you find his voice again. I'm not being disturbed by the Honourable Member for St. Thomas. I would just like her to turn to her right and see how well behaved is the Honourable Member for St. George South, and to seek to emulate him. And so the Honourable Member for Christchurch East, he also said, I like to be on hand. You imagine, look, the public servants in this country are now hearing that a minister is confessing that he interferes in the work of the most junior officers in the ministry, and he ought to be ashamed, and he looks ashamed. And if he looks ashamed and he feels ashamed, he's right for being ashamed. You cannot go into any government department telling people you like to be on hand. They're not his employees, sir. I've said this before. As a matter of public law, as a matter of constitutional law, as a matter of administrative law, a minister has no business up there supervising junior ministers. They are under the authority and the active supervision of the permanent secretary in your ministry. They are not your employees. Their relationship to the state is a relationship of service, not employment. Am I supposed to come in here every week and give lectures in basic constitutional and administrative law? Well, if I'm forced to do it, I will do it. And I'm not being arrogant. I believe that the time has come when the people in Barbados need to understand their rights, and when the public servants in this country need to understand their rights. And no public servant in this country is subject to the supervision of a minister. I have to shout that. You understand, they understand the danger of what they're doing. They understand that that system has been implemented. That system was invented so that political victimization and intimidation would not occur. It is not there because somebody felt like inventing a rule. It is there to insulate service from power. And ministers in this government have a lot of power. And ministers in this government, under the direction of the Prime Minister, have been wielding and exercising power to the disadvantage and the victimization and the intimidation of public servants in this country. And when you find a minister of government saying that he went up to the airport because he likes to be on hand, I don't know why the CEO didn't put him out, put him off the premises. And so, Your Honor, we have found no justification for what is brought to this chamber today. If, as the Honourable Member says, the justification for the legislation is to populate this country, go and tell that to the unemployed. We are pro-integration. We are pro-integration. We are also in defense of the young people of this country, in their aspirations, their legitimate aspirations to find employment under this government that has spent over $70 million on Carrie Festa and is spending millions a month on we gathering, which is now in the honourable member's constituency of Christchurch. And so the young people of this country are weighted under by a government that is not finding avenues for employment for young people, but are finding avenues for squandermania. $70 million spent on Carifesta to show off the people that we have money that we don't have. You heard what the World Bank said last week, that this economy is in trouble. You heard what Mr. Abed said, and I beg his pardon for calling his name, but what Mr. Abed said is consistent with what the World Bank is telling this government. Ineptitude, incompetence, and I haven't begun to speak of corruption. And if I begin to speak of corruption, I will say that that monstrosity at Newton was awarded to a contractor without having gone to tender. And that if it had properly gone to tender, the permanent secretary would have known. But we've had a minister come to this house today to admit micromanagement, that the permanent secretaries in this country have been laid off. They have been laid off by governmental tyranny. And we have a minister coming here today to admit and to confess that he went, and I quote him, to be on hand. What is your business there, sir? What is his business there, sir? But let us press on with this prosecution of this government. I have to say this is now a prosecution of this inept government. They're looking for people. They're looking for people. And if all the evidence is there that you cannot genuinely be looking for people, while our people at the University of the West Indies are expressing doubt that they can survive in this country. And in addition to that, I want to say, if this government is looking for people, talk to the nurses at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, which is on the verge of collapse under this government. When the nurses are taking home $2,400 a month, and several of them have applied to leave this country, the brain drain is well underway under this government. Well underway. $2,400 a month, and several have applied to enter the United States of America. Yes, drink some water. And y'all looking for people? And the nurses about to leave this country? And there's an exodus among young people from the police service? I find this government guilty. The people of this country find this government guilty of all manner of infractions, and I'm not going to list all of them today. And that is why legislation is not trusted. And not only is the legislation not trusted, but the authors of the legislation are not trusted. Y'all, over the last year, and I'm going to repeat it, I had to turn back 4 pieces of legislation. Can't see the light of day. And you come, this honourable member comes to this house today and spends about 7 minutes on the content of legislation and spends half an hour on a useless document. A useless document that has no force in law. But you know when it gets useful? I'll tell the honourable member when it gets useful. I'm going to read, I think it is 3. I'm going to read it for the honourable member. When the honourable member came to review the legislation, he said, and I quote, I'm not going to misquote the honourable member now, if you cannot support yourself, the immigration officer can refuse you. That's what the honorable member said in here today. Number 3 says, and this is the note presumably to the arrivant, the visitor. Upon arrival at the designated port of entry, you shall be granted indefinite stay status. Now, both cannot be correct. So that when we accuse this government through its ministers of being in a state of confusion, as John Milton stated in Paradise Lost, both of these cannot be right. Because the minister's assessment, analysis of Section 3 of the legislation is that the immigration officer can refuse you if you cannot support yourself. Yet, number 3 of the protocol that he read is contradicting what he said in his presentation here today, which is correct, sir. Upon arrival at the designated port of entry, you shall be granted indefinite stay status. The public that listens to me, have been told and have learned that when legislation uses the word shall, it is mandatory. It is something that you must do. You know that, sir. You're one of the few lawyers in here.
Sir, I raise on a point of order. The honourable member is misleading the chamber, and in this one I think is inadvertent. I have sat down in the hope, sir, that he would just get to the point and have ignored a number of other points to interject. But for this one, so as not to convey the wrong information to the public of Barbados, the Immigration Department and the stats in Barbados count arrival as once you pass immigration. That's what we call landing the person. So the person gets off the plane, goes through immigration, goes up to the counter. That person has not arrived in Barbados or has not been landed up to that point. Up to that point, if you're a prohibited person, you can be deported back on to the plane. If they need to do checks against you, the checks can be done. And if it's found that you are still a prohibited person or undesirable person, you can be put back on the plane. If you come to the immigration officer and they have doubts as to whether or not you can sustain yourself in Barbados and they examine you and are satisfied that you cannot, you can be put back on the plane. You are not counted up to that point in time as having arrived in Barbados. So I just wish to draw to the attention of the honourable member. We use the words arrival and landed pretty much interchangeably, but you have arrived in Barbados once you've passed immigration.
I'm grateful for the attempted clarification, and the operative word there is attempted. Now, Section 3, let us add to that attempt to clarify. Section 3 of the legislation reads as follows, Your Honor. Notwithstanding Section 13 of the Immigration Act, Cap 190, but subject to Section 8 of this Act, A, an immigration officer shall permit a freely moving community national to enter and remain in Barbados indefinitely. That expresses itself to have been made subject to Section 8. So therefore, we take the public to Section 8. Regulations. And Section 8 gives the minister, and I'm going to read it, the power to make regulations. The minister may make regulations for giving effect to this act. Have any regulations been made? And if they have been so made, why has this parliament been deprived of sight of those regulations? You're making them in secret. Where are they? If they are not brought to this house, they are not law. Are there any regulations? And if they exist, where are they? Why are they not with this house? I read it again. the minister may make regulations for giving effect to this act. In other words, this act empowers the minister to make regulations. So all that the honourable member got up and said, if that is the content of regulations, he dishonors his purpose by not making those regulations visible to you, Mr. Speaker. I dare say they don't exist. And regulations are a part of the public document. Legislation is a public document. It is not part of a private treaty. It must be made a part of what comes to the House today. I go back to 3 though. I go back to section 3, which the honourable member tried to explain for the House, and not only for the House, but for the benefit of the public of Barbados. Because if the honourable member has brought this legislation here today, he attempted to meet his duty to explain it to the public. How did he explain it? Well, let us help him. And I'm going to read section 3, subsection 1 again. Notwithstanding section 13 of the Immigration Act, chapter 190, but subject to section 8 of that act. I beg your pardon, sir. I'm helping him. I'm quite willing to admit. I'm quite willing to admit when I go to the wrong document. See, if he was following what I would have said, he would realize that I went to the wrong document. But he's not following, he's afraid. Section 8 of the Immigration Act, and I admit to the error, speaks to prohibited persons. People who require hospitalization and that kind of thing. And undesirable persons who may be threats to the security of Barbados, not to section 8 of this act. I beg your pardon, sir. But still the point is made that this act says that unless the immigration officer apprehends or discovers that the person is a person described in section 8 of the Immigration Act, he shall, the word shall, permit a freely moving community national to enter and remain in Barbados indefinitely. What the public now hears is that unless a person is a person mentioned in section 8 of the Immigration Act, and I'm big enough to apologize to the honourable member, but the point still stands. And section 8 of the Immigration Act speaks to prohibited persons. And under the law, under this law, the immigration officer, except in relation to prohibited persons under the Immigration Act, he must. The word shall in legislation means must. The immigration officer under this legislation has lost his discretion. So when the honourable member went to the airport to supervise them, he ought to have told them that there's a sense in which they have become rubber stamps. That the immigration department, the chief immigration officer, has lost his discretion. That unless the person is a prohibited person under the statute, under Cap 190, under the Immigration Act, Section 8, the immigration officer now has no discretion. This means that the Immigration Department of Barbados now becomes unlike that of most immigration departments in the world. They have lost their discretion. And this government has told the Immigration Department that it must allow all persons from those 3 countries entry into Barbados. And I think the honourable member was duty-bound to explain that to the public of Barbados, that the immigration department under this legislation has lost its discretion, that they must allow all persons from CARICOM, from those 3 countries, I beg your pardon, into the country, so that while we are banishing our young people from the University of the West Indies and the young nurses from the Queen Elizabeth Hospital and the young police officers who are expressing disaffection towards this government and dissatisfaction with their service, while they are to be banished from Barbados, the immigration department has lost its discretion in terms of refusing people entry and stay into this country. And this is the state of play in Barbados, and it is not play. It is a serious dilemma in which this country finds itself, and that is not a statement against regional integration. That is a statement in defense of the rights of young people in this country and across the Caribbean. That is what it is about. But as I said, Your Honor, the honourable member spent very little time on the legislation. And the honourable member came, he left Section 3 and jumped to Section 13. And I admit to the error in referring to regulations. But while admitting the error, I think the government still needs to tell the public of Barbados if any regulations have been made. The government still is duty-bound to tell the people if the minister has made any regulations for giving effect to this act, and what is the content of those regulations, and what they will be about. But we come to Section 13 of the Act of Cap 190, I beg your pardon, sir. That is the Immigration Act. Yes, Section 13, I beg your pardon, sir. And that is the section under the Immigration Act that preserves, and I wouldn't call it discretion, because it defines those persons who may be permitted. And the corollary of permission is prohibition. And that is where the Honourable Minister then, and I am responding to the Honourable Minister seriatim as he made the points, and that is to say chronologically, according to his speech. And we heard the lament, we are not getting any flood of people coming in. That was a lament that we heard here today. Clearly, the honourable member was expecting a flood of persons. And that is that the beginning of the failure of this project? We are not getting any flood of people coming in. And immediately after that, and I'm going to relate these two statements, the honourable member for Christchurch, he said, this government is doing well. We are on the right track. This government is doing well. We are on the right track. What did the World Bank say about this government last week? What did the World Bank say about the performance of this economy last week? If we are doing so well in this country, why did the World Bank say that this economy is slowing down and will get slower even over the next few years? That if there's any growth, it will diminish. and that it is diminishing, obviously. And I believe I said this before, and I'm going to say it again, that is consistent. And I'm not going to call his name this time, with what the well-known businessman in Bridgetown said, that a lot of people in this country are suffering. And as I said elsewhere, and I'm going to repeat it here, it is a condition of truth that suffering must be allowed to speak. That truth is not exclusively located among the well-to-do, who always speak well of life in a country. But the suffering must be allowed to speak as well, because unless they're allowed to speak, the entire truth is not told. And that is a lesson this government must learn. This government must stop boasting and patting itself on its back, in spite of non-performance of this economy, which is hurting a lot of people in this country, hurting a lot of people. It is not only the gunshots that are taking lives, it's the cost of living that is taking lives as well. And this government comes in here boasting that we are doing well and we are on the right track. Tell that to the World Bank. Tell that to the gentleman who owns the store in Bridgetown, who says that the number of people begging alms are increasing from year to year. Is this government so deaf to the reality of life in this country that let me get the number correct, sir, that 28 people come in here and somehow seek to convince themselves that this country is doing well? And I haven't left what is before this house today, sir, because what is before this house has social and economic implications. And if this is an attempt to rescue this economy, it is a failed attempt. And it will fail all the more because, as I have said, too many of our young people are taking flight. The brain drain is alive and well. It is well underway. Speak to the nurses at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital who fall under the management of mismanagement. And I have no apology to make for that. They fall under the management of mismanagement. They fall under the national management of an economy in which a government spends millions of dollars on revelry, and a hospital is on the brink of collapse. A hospital is having to beg for $100,000. Beg, yes. They put an ad out begging for $100,000. And more than $50 million was spent on Carifesta to impress our neighbors that we are doing well. The people of this country are being ripped off. The people of this country are being ripped off by governmental squandermania on things that we don't need because this government's priorities are wrong. Too much suffering is in this country. And we must lay it at on the doorstep of this inept government. I come back to the legislation, Your Honor. Now, the Honourable Minister has pointed to the legislation, and he has told Barbadians that these persons will be allowed to be entered on the register of electors in 3 years. The Honourable Member has said that. And that is an explanation for which the public was waiting for some time. And in the event that the public accepts that, and in the event that we in this house accept it, all of us, let us come to Section 9 of this legislation. Which is saying and the legislation describes them, quote unquote, freely moving community national. that they will be placed in accordance with the Representation of the People's Act on the voters list. At section 10, it says that those persons under the Barbados Identity Management Act presumably shall receive their identification cards. And the Honourable Member for Christchurch East has told this country that after 3 years, and we are grateful for the clarification, late as it is, but that after 3 years, these things shall come to pass. I have no intention of quarreling with the Honourable Member for Christchurch East with today's clarification. But what I will do now is that I will ask the Honourable Member to explain the administration of this act. And one expects that if the act has been implemented, well, not the act, if the agreement is being implemented across these 4 countries, and Barbados, according to the Honourable Member, is allowing persons to come into this country on a one-way ticket, is it not a breach of reciprocity that one of these 4 countries is saying that you must come with a return ticket? I repeat, the Honourable Attorney General is attempting to help me, and I'm grateful. If he were cursing me, I would ignore him. But I heard him, and it's an attempt to help interpretation, and that's how a house should be. I thank you. I thank you. Please spread that among your colleagues, that this is a place of civil discourse. Yeah. Disquisition. You need a greenback moment, my friend. Look, stop throwing me off. Reciprocity is the issue here in terms of the administration of this act. They can't distract me, you know. I just pause. Tell the public of Barbados why this government is boasting that any and everybody from those 3 countries can come here with a one-way ticket, and Belize is demanding a 2-way ticket. It may not be the fault of this government, you know. It may not even be the fault of this good and honourable minister. But this good and honourable minister is now charged with the responsibility to explain to the people of Barbados why there is not full reciprocity in relation to the administration of this legislation, and indeed, a question which has gone unanswered. And we ask this in all frankness. Is Barbados the only jurisdiction to have legislated? Listen to me, son. Listen to me. Don't let her distract you. Is Barbados, because she drives behind garbage trucks, telling them which garbage to pick up. Look, Your Honor.
I remember, you know, you're reaching the stage. please
Behind garbage truck.
Please respect
Yeah.
this chamber.
Well, let her respect me by not interrupting me. She drives behind garbage trucks, telling them which houses to stop at. And in different. When you get there, send me out. You day to day.
Patience is a virtue.
Yeah,
my friend.
definitely is.
Please refer to members as honorable members, sir.
Man, I can lambase you.
Honorable Christian yourself.
Thank you, sir.
Please refer to members as honorable members.
Yes, I always do. I always do. During COVID, they're driving about behind a BDF truck telling them which houses to give hampers to.
Honourable members, has that had anything at all to do befort we are debating? Please.
Sort of wash it, sir.
No,
I regret that
but
you heard
I heard it,
I regret that you heard.
but it was meant for their ears.
It wasn't meant for your ears.
But meant for their ears.
It was meant for the ears of the honourable member who was driving around behind a BDF truck,
Honourable member.
telling them which houses to give hampers to.
Honourable member, please continue.
I will, sir. Do not interfere with me. Don't. Never do it. Never do it. Never do it. I can expose you.
Honourable member, please continue.
Yes. Never do that. I on my feet and you interrupted me? Huh?
Honourable member, please avoid the distress and continue. Avoid the distress.
You're a tour guide for a garbage truck?
Honourable
And a
member,
BDF truck?
please,
Yes, sir.
please get on with the debate. This debate has nothing to do with garbage trucks, my friend.
And
None.
And BDF trucks too.
Right, good. So honourable member,
That too.
honourable member, speak to the debate, speak to
Yes.
the bill, speak to the bill.
And so if there were fears as to this legislation relating itself to instant voting, the good and honourable member for Christchurch East has probably allayed those fears today. And the public is grateful to you. And he is so surprised to hear me say that. But that is something that the public was waiting to hear. And if the sum total of what the honourable member says today is that these people who come in will not be allowed to vote in 6 months, the public now breathes a sigh of relief. But the honourable member spoke to voting. And the public has another question as to perhaps a more sinister design behind this legislation. So having allayed the fears as to voting, the public is grateful. While the fortunes of the government slip, the public I'm sorry, sir. I have a very good sense of humor, you see. She's sitting next to a short man, you know, insulting him. You hear her, sir? But we are speaking about the fears that have been allayed. Now, there are other questions, and I'm entitled to ask those questions. And you see, while the public is out there whispering, I am duty-bound to come here and to speak in tones that will be heard, in decibels that will be heard by this government, without fear, and there's certainly no favor. But is there a hidden and sinister aspect to this legislation? And the public expected the minister to address the issue of citizenship that has been sold in certain other countries. I will save them, and I will not refer to the names of those other countries, but the Easterners. And when I speak of Easterners, I'm talking about Europe and Asia. I don't believe in the concept of the Far East, because I don't know where the Far East is far from, tell the truth. Nobody. There's nothing called the Far East. Everybody's located where they are. But if passports and citizenship have been sold to Easterners, and persons not so far east in other CARICOM countries, some of which may be party to this agreement, which this government hopes to make legislation, will they be numbered among those CARICOM nationals who will come to Barbados and who must be given entry and indefinite stay, with the Immigration Department having lost its discretion to exclude them? That is what the public wanted to hear. And the minister's address this morning has been silent on that issue. Completely silent. And I am willing for a point of order to be made. I am willing to sit and hear what shall be the situation when an Easterner who bought a passport from one of the signatories to this treaty, when he or she comes to Barbados, will the Immigration Department lose its discretion as to his intention for indefinite stay? It is a question I ask, and the public of Barbados is entitled to an answer. I am willing to sit and hear the answer to that question. Because this arrangement may not only be about Caribbean integration, this arrangement may be about opening doors. The other country opened the front door. Is this legislation the opening of a back door into this country by persons who are only recently described as CARICOM nationals? And if a man has a passport or citizenship of one of these signatory countries, is he a CARICOM national? We await the answer, and we are sure there's an answer. And we have made concessions as to the Honourable Minister's explanations, because this is a parliament, a place of speech, honest and candid speech, a place of truth. And if that is a question that the public is asking, give the public an answer. May I sit, Your Honour, while the Honourable Member answers? Or is he reserving his answer for his final reply? I apologize if I've upset the Honourable Member. If I've hurt the Honourable Member's feelings, I apologize. But all I'm asking for is an answer to a question that is being asked out there. And the question is this: is this arrangement exclusively for persons who are cultural Caribbean people? Or is it an arrangement that extends to persons who are now legally Caribbean people? And that's a legitimate question, you know. What is the answer? That is why I described the country that dared to pursue a scheme of citizenship by investment and now filters those persons through the back door of this country. I think that's a fair question. And I am mandated by a curious public to ask it. And it is not a question that should make the Honourable Member uncomfortable. It is a fair, reasonable question. And the public wants an answer. And I will say this as well, Your Honour, that if the scheme allows Easterners to come through Barbados' back door via the other country, what else does it facilitate? Because they say that in this politics, the conspiracy theorists will say, you know, all them get in there and they're complicit in each other's wrongdoing or misdeeds. I am not. I ask the questions that are fairly and reasonably asked. And we know what I'm talking about. We know how that question is loaded. We know what is going on in this Caribbean space. We know, for example, that over 35,000 people are newly registered citizens of a certain country in this Caribbean, which is party to this arrangement. Is the back door of this country now open, and must I be afraid to ask this question? And must this government be afraid to answer it? Is this country now exposed to any or all of those 35,000 new citizens of that country, which is party to this arrangement? And if the answer is no, the Honourable Member for Christchurch East will say that the answer is no. If the answer is yes, well, then the people of this country want to hear the truth. What is the truth, Minister? Through you, sir, what is the truth? But of course, the Honourable Member lamented, and I want to read the lament as was stated by the Honourable Member, that we are not getting any flood of people coming. Should not this scheme of liberal movement have been subject to some limited control? Should it not have been? And is that an unreasonable question? And is that an unreasonable concern? And I will explain why I say that. I had to explain recently what is the state, and I did not explain then what is the nation state. Because we hear about the state, and then we hear about the nation state. And people are confused because sometimes they use the words nation and state synonymously. They're not synonymous. The nation is cultural. The state, of course, as I've explained recently, is that human community that exercises sovereign power within the geographical area. But the nation is about a homogeneous group of persons who are citizens of a geographical area. And they are citizens of this geographical Caribbean area. And that is a cultural statement. And I think the Honourable Member now appreciates what I'm saying. And there's an aspect of this scheme that we expect as a priority will embrace persons who belong culturally to what we call this nation. I'm trying to make the point as diplomatically as I can. All citizens do not fall under this scheme, do not fall within what we describe as that homogeneous entity called a nation. In other words, I ask the question again. Are there Easterners or further west, Middle Easterners who will become beneficiaries of this scheme and who can turn up with a passport? Beg your pardon, sir? I say it loud, I can sit down.
Honourable.
Oh, he's trying to.
He's not.
I'll say. Oh, he's not. Oh, he said he's hungry.
Continue, Honourable.
You're bound to get a headache. You're giving this country a headache. Because the people in Barbados want to know, in short, how extensive is this scheme? And that's a legitimate question. In other words, is the scheme while opening front doors in other countries, intended to open a large back door in this country, thereby devaluing the citizenship that existed in Barbados from 1966 to present. Not only were we constitutional and legal citizens, we were cultural citizens, members of a nation. Who could turn up at Toronto, New York, London, Paris, South America, with a highly valued passport that reflected the citizenship of this country? Will this scheme expose the citizenship of this country? The idea of citizenship, the idea of Barbadian citizenship. Will this country expose the idea and the reality of Barbadian citizenship to devaluation based on the extension of citizenship to persons who are not culturally nationals of this region? We in this Barbados, who are regionalists, look forward to the day when it comes that there will be a united Caribbean, a United States of the Caribbean. And that is what I believe all parties in this country stand for. I don't think there's any divide in terms of Caribbean integration. I hope not. And it is the dream of all regionalists that we shall become the United States of the Caribbean, from the north down to the south, being Guyana. But there's a possibility that a noble scheme can be corrupted by transactional arrangements, done not for love of country, done not for love of region, but done for the facilitation of something called money, the movement of money. Must I be afraid to say that? And if this government is afraid to admit that that may be one of the hazards of this scheme, then this government is betraying the interests of the people of this country. That what looks pretty on its face, what looks like another pretty scheme in regionalism, is exposed to corruption by persons who are only interested in finding havens for large amounts of money. And that is called sale. That is called sale of a country. That is called sale of pride. That is called sale of love of country. And will this scheme, operating as it is between 4 countries, only 4 countries, is that scheme a part of a larger scheme that allows the Caribbean space, and certainly in this case 4 Caribbean spaces, to be exploited by persons who have no cultural tie to this region, who have no love for this region, nor for its individual countries, whose histories separate them from the struggles of Caribbean life. And I think this government is called upon to answer that question, and answer the question it must. That is my final appeal to the minister. I wish that the honourable member for Christchurch East would have spent rather more time on the legislation and less time on a protocol that was taken to the airport, a useless protocol that says nothing. It has no, as I said before, no legal force. It is of no legal effect. It is useless. And merely to close by asking this government, why is it that there are 3 pieces of legislation which are related one to the other, and this becomes a zone of great suspicion because as magnanimous as I have been in concession and praise, so must I also not cease to inquire of this government as to why there are three pieces of legislation which marry themselves to each other. One is the immigration legislation, one is the citizenship legislation, and this legislation today, which is about the free movement of CARICOM nationals. Those first two pieces of legislation have been referred to a joint select committee for public submission. In other words, so that the public can be consulted as to the worth of those pieces of legislation. And if this government were acting proprietoriously, this government ought to have brought those three pieces of legislation, including this one today, and joined them in a cognate debate. But for some reason, this government has separated today's legislation from those two pieces of legislation, which have gone to the Joint Select Committee to be further sent to the public. And I repeat, Your Honor, that these three pieces of legislation touch and concern similar interests. Why is today's legislation being separated from those two? What is so different, what is so special about this legislation that it is separated from the other two? Is the answer blowing in the wind? Is not the public entitled to become suspicious? And I asked again, on this basis, that these three pieces of legislation touch and concern the same broad issue of immigration, of citizenship, and of free movement into Barbados. This one, which will be retroactively applied to October the 1st, is being treated differently from the other two in a situation in which there ought to have been a cognate debate, and for the public I explained that all three ought to have been debated together. This rush job, this disturbance of the Chief Parliamentary Council to rush legislation here today, to facilitate a scheme in relation to which there are too many unanswered questions, including the questions I've asked before. Why, government? Why is this one being treated differently? Why is this one rushed to this parliament today and backdated to October 1st? What is so important? What is so hasty about this one? What is within the nature of this one that brings it to this parliament today, Monday? They couldn't even wait until Tuesday, or that's to accommodate the flight of the jet tomorrow, the private jet. Tell the public, government, what is so different about this one. Tell the public, government, why it had to come in October. Tell the public, government, why it could not wait, why it could not be suspended with the immigration and citizenship legislation. Tell the public, government, and tell them the truth. Okay. No, I'm stopping. I'll let them get lunch. I'll let them get lunch. And I will wrap up, Your Honor, by asking that question. And that will be my final question. And the answer, the only answer I can give, is that the content and the purpose of this legislation leaves too much suspicion among the people of this country. And there's some member on that side who will rise after I sit and explain to the people of Barbados why this one has been extracted from among the three and given the special treatment of priority. That is the question that remains. But I will say this as a constitutional lawyer. I will say this as a constitutional lawyer, that the Constitution of this country still is responsible for the definition of citizenship. And you can do all you wish, unless reference is made to the Constitution in relation to citizenship within this 9 pages of haste. This little dagger that is stabbing at the very heart of democracy in Barbados. At the end of the day, unless this bill speaks to constitutional amendment, which it does not, the definition of citizenship within the Constitution remains undisturbed. Let your lawyers tell you that this legislation, standing by itself, even standing in association with the Representation of the People's Act and the Barbados Identity Management Act, still, it does not alter citizenship and the rights in relation to citizenship. And if it intends so to do, it has failed to do it because it has failed to express that in accordance with Section 49 of the Constitution, it is intended to amend that Constitution, citizenship under this legislation, as defined under the Constitution of Barbados, remains undisturbed. And if you intend to extend the definition of citizenship, please, I advise you, make reference to the Constitution of Barbados. Because there's only one section that precedes the section on citizenship in the Constitution. And that section is Section 1, which speaks about the supremacy of the Constitution, which says that any law that is passed that is not in accordance with the Constitution is void. That is what you call the supremacy of the Constitution. And this legislation that has come here today has expressed no amendment of the Constitution. And it therefore cannot amend Section 2 of the Constitution, which defines citizenship. That is a free lesson in constitutional law. So that if this government has intended today, by this legislation, to change the laws in relation to citizenship, it has failed to do so. It has failed to do so. That fundamental definition resides within the four walls of the Constitution, except that there is some extension within other legislation, the citizenship legislation. But as I said, that citizenship legislation in its new form has gone to a select committee. And therefore, it is incumbent upon me to make the point again, that if that has gone to a select committee, why not this one? And impels the question, why has this one been done with this haste? What is the hidden purpose? What is the hidden aspect? What is it that makes this so important to be done retroactively to October the 1st? What is it? Those are legitimate questions that we have asked, and we are seeking answers from this delinquent government. Your Honor, I'm grateful for the time that you've extended to me. I'm obliged, sir.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I therefore beg to move the suspension of the House until 2:55 p.m.
What?
55 p.m.
Question is that this Honourable Chamber be suspended until 2:55 p.m. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This Honourable Chamber stands suspended until 2:55 p.m.